Let's bring in right now Riley Walters of the Heritage Foundation to talk about this. And look, there's been a lot of speculation. Markets have been steadily rising on hopes of a deal. But is this going to be a good deal, Riley, from what we know?
You're right. I mean, certainly the devil's in the details for this trade deal. What it's looking like is we might have a deal set by the end of March, but the question is whether tariffs will continue to still be around at the end of March, whether, perhaps the tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports will remain, or perhaps all $250 billion worth of goods that are currently tariffed will be removed. I think for sure, I think what markets are hopeful and what a lot of Americans would like to see is a complete removal of these tariffs at this time.
Well, speaking of markets, we should say that UBS put out a note saying that basically that if this deal is finally signed, you could see a 10% global rally in stocks. We're certainly hoping for that. But at the same time, it is about the intellectual property. Robert Lighthizer was on the Hill last week in the middle of all the other testimonies that we were watching on Capitol Hill. And he talked about the fact that, look, maybe 30 pages of the 100 pages that they had in their working document with China actually discuss the issue of intellectual property. That is the one thing that many investors have said, and analysts said, that they're nervous about, because that we're not going to be tough enough when it comes to the theft of intellectual property, and that's a big sticking point for President Trump.
It is. I mean, intellectual property, if anything, has been the great unifier of this trade sort of negotiations. It's what's brought both opponents and those who agree with the trade war together around this issue. That's why we haven't seen as much pushback against the trade issues as we would have liked to see. But it's also one of the major sticking points. And of course, the president and Robert Lighthizer are tariff men. They like to see tariffs, but there are more effective ways of handling intellectual property theft, which we should and haven't been approaching.
It's interesting because Steve Bannon, the former advisor to the president, has been very vocal on the airwaves over the weekend, saying that he doesn't think that we should be signing a deal so soon. He thinks that it could take almost a year to really get the best deal for the United States. Other critics of the president saying that he needs a win on the heels of what turned out to be no deal with the North Koreans. Do you agree with that?
I think the sooner the deal, the better. There's going to be a lot of speculation, or a lot of people in the president's ear saying he should continue to hold out until something happens. Well, at that point, you're 2 years later, and you're into an election, and you can't really get anything done because you waited too long. And meanwhile, the United States is losing economic strength because these tariffs are affecting Americans too. Yeah. And Americans don't want to continue to see, especially the farmers, they don't want to see these costs for another 2 years.
Well, and also this potential $18 billion energy purchase from Cheniere Energy, that's also being reported by the Journal again, that report came out yesterday. Really quick, I do want to ask you on the political side here, President Trump certainly has been vocal. Besides that 2-hour speech he gave at CPAC on Saturday, he also tweeted about why he thinks that things went wrong with him when it came to North Korea. And I'm wondering if you think that the failure with the North Koreans means that the Chinese are going to have a little bit of leverage over President Trump. And do you think that Mar-a-Lago is the place where we get this final agreement signed?
I would think that the president's position, or I guess success with actually the U.S.-Canada-Mexico agreement, has more sort of leverage or influence on the future of U.S.-China negotiations than U.S.-North Korea negotiations. Certainly with the U.S.-North Korea negotiations, I think the president was a little overambitious. Certainly, North Korea is, a bad actor. But, I think with China, I think a deal can be made. I think there should be one by the end of this month.
Yeah, all right. Well, we will see again. We're thinking March 27th. That's kind of the date being thrown out there for this summit between the two presidents, and also this huge event happening in China where Xi's going to be under pressure from his own government to come up with a good deal for them. Riley Walters. Riley, thank you.
Thank you.